Good morning. Welcome to the Basketball Show. I'm your host, Paul Sir. Glad to be here with Mr. Ryan Reed. Mr. Reed, how are you today?
I feel great. I feel warm. I kind of realized I take for granted wearing a shirt to the show today, but today I thought about it. I was like, you know what? I'm wearing a shirt to the show today, and it was a subconscious decision before, and now I'm thankful for it. So
what you're saying to the audience is normally you come shirtless? I haven't seen.
Yeah.
But no, I
have to usually think about what I'm going to wear. Today I thought about it. I was like, you know, I'm going to wear a shirt because it's warm, but normally the past couple weeks I'm just doing it because it's warm, but now I think I made a conscious decision. I'm just being grateful, Paul.
In the fact that you're expressing gratitude by wearing a shirt
next week, I'll be
greatly appreciated. Yeah, we'll wait on that one. Hope you all had a great week. It's been an very interesting couple of weeks, actually, in the basketball world, because it's hard to believe. You know, Ryan, the NBA Finals, it's only going to be 2 weeks on Sunday.
It feels like it's been a long time.
It seems like it's 6 months ago with the draft. Now all the free agency, all the chatter in the WNBA. It has been a real interesting, intense time. That's a word that I think really describes the basketball world right now. It's very intense, almost at a level that I really haven't seen in quite a long time, because I think the drama around the NBA Finals, going to 7 games, 2 new teams, the injuries to Tatum and Halliburton, all of the storylines that went along throughout the NBA playoffs, culminating in a Game 7 win for a team that hasn't won a championship since it was the Seattle Supersonics back in the late 70s. So it's been very, very dramatic. So we're gonna dive into a whole bunch of those topics today. We have the theme of the show today: heavy hitters. Have we ever got heavy hitters coming on today? 10:20, we'll have Steve Sir on. Steve's has been Canada's number one 3x3 player. I only recently, because he hasn't been actually competing because he's been coaching, but he's been Canada's number one ranked 3x3 player since 2017. Steve coaches Mongolia, and people say, Mongolia, why would you coach there? Well, the women's team just won a silver in the World Cup. And we're going to talk about that. And Steve also serves as the associate GM for the Edmonton Stingers. And the Stingers, man, are they on a roll? And we're going to get into some Stingers talk shortly. But I also have on our friends Pat Boylan, the voice of the Indiana Pacers and the Indiana Fever. He's going to give us his post-Pacer championship run and the Halliburton situation, etc. And then Ben Golliver from the Washington Post comes on. Ben and I did a deep dive into a whole bunch of stuff about the NBA Finals, free agency draft, where franchises are going, etc. That will be in the second hour as well. Ryan, let's jump to our poll question.
Who in the West can displace the Thunder? The options we have for you today on Basketball_Show are the Houston Rockets, the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Los Angeles Lakers, and the Denver Nuggets. So go vote and text your thoughts in at 833-401-1440, and we'll share the best responses. 833-401-1440. Really looking forward to your opinions, because I think, Ryan, it would have seemed like an absurd question 2 weeks ago to even talk about anybody having the ability to displace the Thunder. The Thunder now know what it's like to win a championship. They have SGA signed to a new deal. They're keeping their team intact. They get their number one draft pick from last year, who didn't play a minute this year because of injury. They've got a nice new draft pick. I mean, this team is loaded and it is built for success. But the Western Conference has not taken this lying down. Well, it's not to the same extent maybe, but the Celtics last year, we kind of said the same thing. We're just like, who on earth stops these guys next year? But injuries happen. Team just degradation happens. What am I trying to say there?
Degradation.
There we go. Perfect. Yeah. So that just going to happen automatically, or not automatically, but just through time. So I think it's the Thunder are very good, but as time moves along, there's going to be issues that pop up, injuries that happen, and it's going to make it wide open.
It's always the X factor. There's no such thing as a sure thing, and in sport in particular, if for no other reason, injuries changing the course of a franchise. Now, having said that,
Are the Thunder heavily armored enough that key injuries to anyone not named Gilgeous-Alexander, could that be covered up? I would say you could make a strong case for that they're deep enough at all positions that even if, let's say, a Lou Dort goes down or a Hartenstein goes down, like players like that, do they have the depth that they're going to be able to they're going to be able to carry on and still be a contender for a title? I would say probably yes. Again, for anybody like in Boston, other not named Jason Tatum, in the Thunder, SGA, and for the Nuggets, you would say, of course, Jokic. So, but so many things can come into place. So let's dive into 3 from Deep, which is presented by the 2025 Hoop City 3x3 Festival, July 31st to August 3rd at the Ice Palace. 4 weeks from today, we're going to be battling it out for the women's final in the women's series. 4 FIBA 3x3 events, actually 3. We had to cancel one of the qualifiers because of a lack of registrations, but that's okay. We've got a great men's light quest phasing into the women's series, which is just loaded top to bottom with great teams. And I can say exactly the same. When I saw the men's lineup, holy smokes, is this stacked with great teams. It's the largest FIBA 3x3 event in North America. Best teams in the world, including our Canadian women, who just finished 4th in the world, or finished 3rd rather, bronze medal in the World Cup. And we have Olympic medal winning teams on both sides as well. So it's going to be great. Let's dive into free agency. Let's talk about what the heck is going on out there. And I think the team that jumps right to the forefront, and by the way, nobody signed anything yet. I think it's not till 12:01 tonight that they're able to actually sign. So
it's all agreed to. It's just agreed to.
Exactly. So barring any last-second stuff, and one of the teams that continually gets mentioned, even though they have acquired Kevin Durant in a blockbuster trade, is Houston making some other deals, and I think expanding the tentacles of this trade. But Ryan, why don't you summarize what happened between Houston and Phoenix?
Well, they brought in Kevin Durant, and actually what's going to happen is they're going to expand it to a record 7 different teams, and the terms of that is still to be determined. A lot of the stuff is still very fluid with the Rockets and the rest of the league. Well, I guess a quarter of the league essentially. But the Rockets did also bring in Dorian Finney-Smith on a 4-year deal at $53 million, and there's rumors the Lakers were telling teams that he just has a messed up ankle and that he's just kind of done. But he got 4 years, $53 million out of it. So, but yeah, the Rockets are set for a while. It seems for the next couple of years at least. We're at the lineup of Fred VanVleet and Amen Thompson, Kevin Durant, Dorian Finney-Smith, Jabari Smith, as well as they have 3 good centers too: Capella, Steven Adams, and Şengün. So you talk about the Thunder depth. That's great depth for the Rockets there too.
Well, and I think that's been a theme that's permeating the NBA right now. Is you can't win with 5 or 6 players, which is why the Finney-Smith, now if the rumors are true, obviously that changes things. But if it's just sour grapes and they're spreading something that maybe isn't quite as extreme as they're saying, but the Lakers are hurting. And Ben and I really go into the signing of DeAndre Ayton from Portland. That isn't necessarily, unless Ayton has a complete personality change, that isn't the signing that I think that people think it might be.
What I remember from his draft year, because I was very that year, I was very into it as the Kings of the second pick. We drafted Marvin Bagley over Luka Doncic. I'm still kind of upset about that, but
but that year, that's as bad as Bowie over Jordan. Yeah. I know.
That year I was looking at the interviews from the post draft, and one of the questions was for all the draftees was, "What are you most looking forward to?" And guys like Luka and even Bagley were like, my first game, or playing in NBA Finals, or playing in a playoff game. I remember DeAndre Ayton's was my second NBA contract.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what are we doing? Like, that doesn't seem like appropriate at all.
Listen to my podcast, because like when I pre-record with some of our top guests, like I did with Pat
Boylan from the Fever and Pacers, and I did with Ben from the Washington Post. I mean, our interviews really go a long time. We can only play a portion of them on the show here, and I really would encourage you. It's time well spent to listen to them, but he has a lot to say about DeAndre Ayton and about some things. One highlight was just that him sharing that he just really couldn't get along without playing video games with his friends. Like, he's really a child.
The Pacers signed him, and then they got matched by the Suns back in the day.
Yeah. And how did that work out for both? I mean,
he got his second NBA contract.
Well, he did, and I mean, he's a tall, athletic,
Paul got him paid.
Gifted. He's got the talent, and in the NBA, that's what they throw money at, potential. And so I think, like in the case of the Lakers, unless he has a real personality change, a real awakening. That's going to be interesting. And speaking of awakenings, you hear all these various rumblings that Luka's a lot thinner now, that he's really working himself in shape. So it's going to be interesting to see that. But the Lakers, let's jump to them too. Like Houston, okay, we're going to see where it all ends up if it gets to the full 7-team rumor that's being talked about and what those movements will actually be about. But I mean, when you look at the T-Wolves, when you look at some of the other teams that, like T-Wolves signed Randall. They let Nickeil Alexander-Walker go. He went to Atlanta. Atlanta's making some moves in the East, again, on that depth theme, making them a lot more interesting than they've ever been. Because the one thing the Atlanta Hawks have never been is interesting since Dominique Wilkins. They have never been an interesting team. It's a city that really doesn't support their NBA team like other cities do. But they haven't had a lot to cheer of, i.e. I'll refer to Minneapolis and, Sacramento and teams, long-suffering fan bases that, over time you hear things, you see things, you got some hope. But but the Lakers are interesting because of the rumors of LeBron's cryptic message of not getting a second year. Here's the absurdity of the NBA. You just signed a deal for $52 million. You're a flippin' billionaire, and you're ticked. You're ticked because you've been, quote, disrespected because you didn't get a second year extension. That, I guess it's just that world, Ryan. But do you think there is anything to the rumblings that they might make a deal and LeBron might finish his career elsewhere?
Yes, but also what is LeBron's trade value? LeBron is one of the best players in the NBA, probably a top 10 player still, which is just insane to think about, and you're 23 now. But it's 1 or 2 year rental, and the price you'd have to pay for him to get his value, it's just way outside what you'd want to pay. Even if you're like the Cavaliers, for example, you're going to pay Mobley and Allen for LeBron for 2 years. Obviously, I think LeBron, you could argue, is a better package than those two players, especially come playoff time. But what's really the point?
But is he really? And what will he be? See, now you're getting into that gray area. As spectacular as LeBron is, he's injured more often, and he is going to be 41 shortly. And Father Time is taking its toll, if albeit ever so slowly. But to give up Mobley and Allen for LeBron, I don't see it, to be honest. I don't see why they would be in a qualified way better with that kind of movement.
The only team that makes sense for me would be maybe the Mavericks to take a shot and keep Kyrie, and they have some chemistry with LeBron, and AD has some chemistry with LeBron, and just kind of keep those guys.
I agree with that. I think that would be a nifty move. They've got a surplus of bigs in Dallas, and the reasons you just described, plus LeBron with Cooper Flagg. If I'm Cooper Flagg, I'd love to play with LeBron because LeBron is such a great passer. If LeBron can accept, instead of averaging 25, he averages 20.
Yeah, because they have the contracts to do it. They could trade Klay Thompson and PJ Washington and one of the bigs, probably Gafford, and that gets you there. And then all of a sudden, your starting lineup is Kyrie.
When he gets back. Now, there's the asterisk there. True. Is he come back 100%?
But you could do Kyrie and a placement like Max Christie at the 2, another guy who's played with LeBron.
And very good.
And then LeBron, Flagg, and AD.
That's a nice lineup.
Or you could do AD and Lively with LeBron and Flagg and Kyrie.
Absolutely.
You have lots of options, and they have the depth there, but again, does LeBron want to play in Dallas? Does he want to move his family up there?
Right.
Would Bronny be in the deal?
Yeah, would Bronny be the starting two?
Can you imagine Bronny's like, I don't need to go with my dad, guys. I'm 21.
Yeah, I know. But
you don't need to trade me with him.
That's going to be one of the interesting things is kind of like Lonzo Ball's dad. You never really hear about him anymore. You kind of with Bronny, since the season's been over, you haven't heard a word.
My thing with the Bronny is like he didn't sign up for that though. LeVar Ball did sign up for that.
Yeah,
he
LeVar was.
Bronny happens to be the son of the top two player ever.
And for all intents, it seems he's definitely been pulled into the controversy.
I think Bronny just wants to play. I think he enjoys the fame a little bit, but I think he just wants to play and kind of lay low.
And the other thing is he's got to prove that he can play, and he really isn't getting that chance by being in that artificial world of being a two-way player when he's not good enough to be a rotation player on the Lakers.
Yes.
Like he should be a G League guy.
He's played well in the G League too. He's played well.
Yeah, so let him stay down there and get better. He's really young, so let him get better and develop.
He was asked about the rumors about LeBron. And he's like, I don't really pay attention to that. And I have a hard time believing that. Like, it's literally your dad. Like, what do you guys talk about?
Well, yeah, but maybe they don't talk much. Like
they live together.
Oh, then, okay. I didn't know that. All right, so he's still living at home?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
All right. I think they... I think they might... I don't think they carpool to practice, but...
Okay, well, whatever. It's going to be interesting. But I think you've hit on a potential landing place for LeBron.
I still, if I had to bet money,
he'll be a Laker.
No, he'll be a Laker.
He'll be a Laker. I agree.
But it's fun to think about.
Yeah, and one of the other fun scenarios to think about is J.J. Redick coaching Ayton because they're
going to lose his marbles.
Oh, he's going to be just. It's going to be real interesting how this unfolds. Like, how much do you have to kowtow to that guy? Is he the child he's portrayed to be? Because he certainly hasn't made Phoenix or Portland better when he's been there, and they couldn't wait to get him out of town. And usually a leopard doesn't change his spots. And like I said, if you want some in-depth analysis of that and much, much more, listen to my podcast, the Basketball Show podcast, and all of your podcast providers with Ben Golliver, because we really go into depth on not just Ayton, but a bunch of the other trades. Before we run out of time and we bring Steve in, I'd like to just touch on WNBA real briefly. Ryan, Indiana Fever winning without Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark's groin injury, and groins, as we know, they're tough ones. Like, you don't just rebound, and the thing you want to do is take your time and make sure. So she's been rumored to be cleared to play, but in the last two games, both times they've pulled back. But still maintains her status as the number one all-star selection, going to be starting. The controversy over her being selected 9th by her peers.
Ridiculous.
Petty jealousy all over the place. WNBA still wrestling with who they are. Are they a major league or not? Still behaving like minor leaguers at a variety of levels there, but they're getting better, and the pressure from the NBA, who is writing the checks for the overdrafts, will continue to intensify to get their act together.
Well, they have to protect the asset with Caitlin Clark. Back to what you were saying, I feel like they don't want to rush her back, because if she gets hurt again and it's a long-term injury, what happens to the ticket sales? They're gone.
They're gone.
Like, with all due respect, the Fever have won 3 in a row. That's nice. Like, they're doing okay. They just won by 30 against the Aces, and the Aces aren't bad. So
in Vegas, I mean, they've went to Minnesota.
They don't need Caitlin Clark.
And everybody's salivating. Okay, if Caitlin comes back healthy, because she was obviously still injured after she came back the last time. She had that out of this world game against the New York Liberty, and then was 1 for 23 from 3 after that, but clearly hobbled. Yeah. So now I think I hope they maintain their wits about them so that they don't rush her back. Before we go to break, Ryan, we have to touch on the Edmonton Stingers. We're going to talk to Steve about that as well. But I'll tell you what, folks, there's a game on Sunday, this coming Sunday, against Calgary. Calgary has just added a couple of really good players. Stingers have made some lineup shifts in the last couple of weeks. Man, are they playing well. The other night against Montreal, this past Tuesday, they were off the charts. Sean East, the second best player the Stingers have had since Xavier Moon. And they have a whole bunch of other good players that love playing together. The chemistry, camaraderie, fellowship
just exudes from this team right now. And of course, when you're winning, the sun shines brighter and everybody's a nice guy when you're winning. But this team is on a roll. They know how to win. They trust each other. So I think this game with Calgary, who they lost to in a game they probably should have won in game 1 of this year, just beat Calgary by 2 in a game in Red Deer recently. So this is going to be a great game on Sunday. Get your tickets. Let's fill this place up. Let's yell Calgary out of the gym. Let's be the true sixth man and support this team. But folks, this team is worth watching. Get out to whatever it's called now, the Hive, the Hangar, Hall D, whatever it is at Expo. Get out there and go watch the Stingers. This is great pro basketball.
Quick thought on that. I want a quick thought from you on the WNBA. The expansion.
Yeah.
What do you think about the new cities? A lot of people are complaining that they're not big markets. Like there's no team in Florida, there's no team in another team in California, but they have Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia. Have you been to those cities? And is it worthy enough to be a fun travel destination for a WNBA team?
They're like going, well, I mean, it depends on what areas you go to, like in Detroit. I mean, they have a lot of tough areas, but it's a nice city. It's a nice area. I think here's the deal. They're going to go, where people want them and are willing to pay for them.
Yeah, like in Florida, just because they didn't want a team. Like I'm sure if they wanted a team, they'd get a team.
Yeah, and you got to be willing to pay the price for it. But the other thing is, number one, go where you're wanted. And number two, I think we know now, OKC, Indianapolis, Minneapolis, you don't need to be a big market.
Do you think Iowa could support a WNBA team or no?
I don't know. Okay. I don't know if Des Moines could or not. They might be able to. They certainly might be able to. Heck, Edmonton might be able to. And I'm serious. Yeah. I'm serious.
Well, remember the one game they had here when it was
sold out.
Vegas and LA and Seattle was sold out.
Sold out. I mean, WNBA, best move, a joint franchise, WNBA in Edmonton, Calgary. Play half the games in each city and build it up. We've got a great women's basketball culture and history here. So, yeah, but I'm excited about it. And it even makes me more excited when I hear that whining because –
no such thing as bad PR, right? Just any attention is good.
And I mean, if these cities throw their weight behind it, they have the backers, they have the financial wherewithal, and they want them there, good luck to them. I think it's great.
For me, it's only that there's not many established stars in the league. There's not like 15 to 20. In the NBA, for example, they're thinking about expansion, but there's 20 to 25 established stars. In the WNBA, they don't have maybe that established stars and just like getting more teams.
But you've got Asia Wilson, who's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I mean, Caitlin Clark's generational, probably the most popular athlete in North America, not across all sports platforms.
I'm not saying there isn't established stars. I'm saying maybe more.
No, they need more. Paige Beckers is one that is already establishing herself in a big, big way. But you're right. It has to come. The media coverage has to come. All kinds of things have to come. But it's coming on the back of Caitlin Clark.
Yeah.
It is coming. So maybe this is the moment, and hopefully it works out. We're going to have to take a break right now. When we come back, we're going to bring in Steve Sir, and we're going to talk about his silver medal winning women's team at the World Cup in the FIBA 3x3 World Cup Championships. And we'll talk about the Singers as well here on the Basketball Show, Sports 1440. Welcome back to the Basketball Show. I'm your host, Paul Sir, along with Ryan Reed, and I'm pleased to be joined by Steve Sir. Steve, thanks for making time. Welcome back to Edmonton.
Hi, thanks for having me today.
Well, I mean, we got to start with the low-hanging fruit here. I mean, where would you like to start about what your women's 3x3 team, the national team from Mongolia, just accomplished at the FIBA 3x3 World Cup in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia?
Oh, we can start wherever you'd like. It was.
You go.
It was for anyone listening who doesn't know, our women's team, the Mongolian 3x3 women's team, finished second at the World Cup and won the silver medal. This is a history-making step for Basketball Mongolia. It's the highest finish that any team has had at a world event in any sport in their country's history. So it was a really big deal, and it was a storybook run for our girls. The previous World Cups held 2 years ago in Vienna, Austria. We didn't win one game. The previous World Cup to that in Antwerp, we won one game against Egypt, who had 3 players for that game, and it was a huge jump. It's the product of the girls' hard work and their determination to continue to try and improve in basketball. And it's one of those things where if you see it on social media or you catch some highlights, you go like, wow, this just popped up overnight. It's the product of 3 years of hard work and persistence and belief that it can get better if we're working on the right things and if we continue to progress. So it's an incredible moment, and I just couldn't be prouder of the players and what they accomplished.
Well, and it was the end result in and of itself. When you look at it, a silver medal, that's fantastic. But the road there, I remember, Steve, we exchanged messages after you beat Brazil. And Brazil's a good team in the Americas zone, and I mean that was a big deal. But then it was followed up by wins against teams that nobody prior to the tournament would have ever given you a chance to beat. Maybe walk through the games that you won.
Sure, that'd be great. Well, we had a pool of, so for the World Cup in this one, there were 5 teams in 4 pools. So in order to advance, you had to finish in the top 3. And the way that it worked was the top seed in each pool would advance directly to the quarterfinals, and then the second and the third would advance to a play-in round where the winners of that game would move into the quarterfinals. So when we were planning for this, we hadn't set a bar of, well, we need to do this or otherwise we don't succeed. When the seeding came out, we knew our pool was Brazil, Ukraine, Germany, and Spain, which when you look at it, is the Olympic gold medalist in Germany, the Olympic silver medalist in Spain, and the AmeriCup bronze medalist in Brazil. So it's a really tough pool, like every pool was. But when the seeding came out, we saw that we had Brazil as the first game. I had played for Canada in May at the World Cup qualifier in Baku, Azerbaijan, and one of the teams that was there on the women's side that qualified was Brazil. So I watched them play a little bit, and once we saw the seeding, went back to the video, and I said to the team and to our, to the guys who I'm working with, is like, the only game that matters here is Brazil, and we can beat them. They're physical, they're strong, they're athletic, but there's just something about the way that they play that if we handle our business correctly, we can beat these women. So that was what our preparation was, really reinforcing to the girls, like, hey, they're going to hammer you on the glass. They're going to put the ball on the ground. They're going to drive. They're going to be super physical with you. But if you set good screens away from the ball, if your defense is hands up, we call it, it's a pretty common term now, wall up, close to the basket instead of reaching and fouling, they're going to have a hard time finishing over you. We can beat them. So in our first game, we were struggling to get going. I think there were nerves playing at home in front of our crowd. I believe we were down 12-6 at one point, and then our girls just kind of snapped to, and you could see that if we just got going, we could win the game. And our girls had an incredible finish to the game. We went on a 9-2 run, and we ended up winning 15-14. One of our players hit a 2 with 6 seconds left to take the lead. We were down 14-13, got a big stop, made a great penetrate, got to the paint, hit the wing for the shot, and we ended up winning. And in a way, it was almost like a big weight off the girls of like, oh man, we really can do this, and we really can compete. So that was our first game. The second game that day was against Spain, who is a terrific team, and we played with them hard for the first 5 minutes, and then they hit a couple 2s and put the pedal down and ended up beating us. But the score didn't reflect, I thought, how well we played. And then our second day, we moved into playing Germany and Ukraine. We were 1-1, so we had a good chance. And we messaged to the girls, if we just focus one game at a time, we can advance. And we ended up playing probably the best game I've seen us play against Germany, where we didn't foul, we took care of the ball, we made open shots, we made each other better. And again, we were just strong and focused throughout the entire game. So we ended up beating Germany and then moved into an important game against Ukraine. And our girls had a flair for the dramatic. We played 3 overtime games out of 7, and we won all three with some kind of dramatic shot or some kind of dramatic play, and we hit a big 2 in overtime to beat Ukraine, and the place just went nuts. So our pool play really set the tone of we can do this if we believe and if we're tough. That was our message to the girls before every game, of toughness and belief. And we surpassed whatever we had thought initially, going 3-1 in pool play. But I think the key for us was just focusing on the single game in front of us and not getting too caught up of what do we do next and what happens next. We just have to compete, win this game, and we'll move on to what's next.
And what was next?
Well, after we beat Ukraine, we got China in the cross, and with China being a neighboring country and obviously being a huge sports country, in particular basketball, this was a massive, massive moment for our women, that they got to play China at home in the World Cup in a crossover game. So we're playing out of pool. This just doesn't happen if you're in Mongolia. Like, this has not happened before. The initial feeling was, oof, they're big, they're strong, they're this and that. And then we dug into video that night, and I said to our assistant coach and our physical therapist, like, we're going to beat these girls for sure. If we just wall up on defense, make it tough on them, if we move the ball side to side and make them move, we're going to beat these girls for sure. And to give our girls credit, when it came down to the tough stuff, that's exactly what they did. The ball changed sides. They had to move east to west. It was tougher for them because they had a couple girls that are really good, but big and a little slow-footed. And then our girls were, man, they were tough. They hit a big shot. And one of our girls who has just improved so much over the last couple of years, her name is Aruka. And the last play was just one of those, like, it was just such a just get off my court play. Like, it was got a rebound, dribbled out, put her shoulder into a girl, got to the rim, missed it, got the rebound, hit the shot. That was the game winner. The whole place went crazy. And when you're watching, it was just like, that was Aruka doing the, like, get off my court. It was so cool to see in such a big moment. And then from there, our reward was the USA, which was big. But same thing is when we dug into the video, it's like, we can beat these girls if we just keep doing the things that we're doing. Manage the ball, change sides, wall up near the basket, don't be careless. We can beat them. And one of the attitudes you could see was the atmosphere at the event was incredible. Obviously, we're the home team, and the fans are completely into this, but other teams are into this as well. But every team that we played, you got the impression they were kind of like, why hasn't somebody beat these girls? We'll beat them. So I wouldn't say they were taking us light, but there was a thing of, like, we'll be all right. And in particular against the U.S., they just weren't ready when they came out. And it was funny, you could hear their staff in the stands calling out our plays, but then we'd run our plays and get shots. And it was like, well, part of scouting, sure, is knowing the play, but the next part is figuring out how you want to guard it. And they didn't do that. So it helped us a bunch. And the USA girls, they're physical, they're strong, they're extremely talented. They're really good players. But they're playing a road game in the World Cup in Mongolia against our girls who just 100% at this point believe that they could beat anybody. So again, we played a good game. One of our girls hit 2 free throws that if maybe we had more time, I would describe why that was such a big moment for her, because the night before she made a mistake and was just heartbroken against China. Even though we won, she just was heartbroken that she felt she almost lost the game. And the very next game, she had the same play to make it right, and she did it right. So it was a huge moment for her. So we beat USA, and then we had a day, moved into the semifinals against Poland. Big team, really experienced, physical, same type of thing. We scrimmaged them before the World Cup, and they kind of whipped us. And you could see there was a little bit of like, oh man, it'll just be like the scrimmage. And we came up with a plan. Same thing, physical with their big. When she's around the basket, she couldn't move very well away from the basket, so attack her. They had the leading scorer for the tournament. She shoots it real well. She gets to the rim. She's a physical guard. So it was, contest the 2, move your feet. She always goes right. And then also they were big on the Euro flop. They were really big on driving to the basket, pretending they're getting hitting and just throwing the ball at the rim. So we really talked with our girls that, like, just go straight up in the air, make them make shots. Don't bail them out with silly fouls and play into that. Same thing, our girls battled, stuck with them. The crowd lifted them up probably an extra level. And we went to overtime again, struggled, missed a couple shots. For those not familiar with 3x3, overtime is the first to 2 points to win. And Poland scored, and we missed a shot. We got a big stop. Aruka, who had just was the leading scorer of the tournament, was just a beast the whole week. Set a little ghost screen, popped away from it. I can't really we've repped this shot for 2 years with her, where it was just run at, get away, run at, get away. And she does it and gets the shot. Girl from Poland closes out just a sec too late. Aruka hits it. We win the game. We go to the finals. It was like a storybook.
Yeah, it really was.
To see how these girls just kept finding ways to win, kept believing, even when they got down. And I guess for the people listening, these are steps that we're taking on the biggest stage in 3x3, and were things that our women's team really struggled with in the last couple of years. They get down, all of a sudden one mistake becomes two, and you kind of just almost mentally talk yourself out of a game. And they didn't do it this time. It's a testament to how strong they were mentally. They just kept finding ways to win against really good competition. And then in the final, we ran up against a Netherlands team that was fantastic. They beat Canada in the semis. They're super physical. They shoot the ball well. They're all on the same page. We fought like crazy. We lost 15-9, and it came to an end. But it was history for the country, history for our girls, and there was no shame in losing to a team like Netherlands caliber. Their coach is probably the best coach on the women's side in 3x3 right now, and they just played an awesome game. So our girls, the run they went on is... It's hard to put into words just what it meant, but it was incredible to watch.
I'm talking with Steve Sir here on the Basketball Show. We're talking about the FIBA 3x3 World Cup that just wrapped up recently in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, where Steve's women's national team for Mongolia won the silver medal here on the Basketball Show with Paul and Ryan. A couple of things that I would just point out again for our listeners' benefit. Germany, who you beat, were the gold medalists at the Paris Olympics. China was the number one seed. The USA, along with being the USA, is the defending World Cup champion. These are monumental wins at any time in any place, like historic wins singularly. To string them together in the dramatic fashion that you describe, Steve, is you just can't put it into words. And again, for our listeners, so much so that players and coach received medals from the president of Mongolia for this accomplishment. So this is truly historic and game-changing for their whole culture. I guess, Steve, maybe talk to this. I think there's so little understood about the world of 3x3, which you've been immersed in for nearly 10 years. But you talked about the scouting that you did, the breaking down of film. You treat this like any coach treats 5-on-5, don't you, in terms of practice and preparation?
Oh, yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, you have your practices, you do your planning, you work on your core values as a team. We've always had to get better at defense, so defense is a big thing of our daily preparation. And then scouting was not something that was done much in Mongolia, if at all. And that's the world that I come from, playing Division I basketball, where scouting was done to the nth degree, and, knowing set plays, knowing tendencies, being able to recite them at a moment's notice. And then when you move into the pro stuff where, teams are super talented, you have to have an idea of what to expect in order to try and neutralize that. I watch a lot of 3x3. I mean, if you're in this world, you have to learn and know everything about it. I mean, I think that's kind of just a rule for anything. If you want to be successful at it, you got to know it inside out and backwards. And our girls, to give them credit, were very eager and anxious to, what do we do here? What do we do there? How do we handle this? And some of it was, we can do this, this, and this. And this player always goes over the left shoulder. This player always goes right and then spins back to their left. They absorbed that, they put it on the court, and then they were confident in the very last step of that is and then you're just going to have to play. Like, I can tell you what they're going to do. Then you have to go out and do it. But then, if it zags or if something happens, you got to just stand in there and be tough and make a play. And they did that. So the preparatory stuff was big for us because, like you said, we played USA that's the gold medalist at the last World Cup 2 years ago. They're the bronze medalist at the Olympics a summer ago. And then obviously their players are always extremely talented and skilled. And then China being what they are, and Germany being what they are, and Brazil being what they are, Poland being what they are, preparation was going to be a big part of that. And we said to the girls a couple of weeks before, is no one's going to be more prepared than us. That's one of the deals that we're making right now. So about a month out from the event, that was the deal we said, is no one's going to be more prepared than us. So we all have to put our hands in and say, are we in agreement on this? Are we going to all focus in, and that's what we're going to do? And all the girls, to a woman said, yes, let's do that. So that was a big part of it. But like anybody knows, you can bring the best plan in the world to your team, but if there isn't buy-in, then it's going to be 50-50 on if it happens. So it was, again, a credit to our women that they competed. And we'd finish these games and we'd run back to our hotel. We had Craig Wilson, who's from Edmonton, who owns Pivotal Physiotherapy, that was out with me in Mongolia and has worked for our national team for the last couple of years. So we're back to the hotel. We're doing recovery. We're doing treatment. We got our scouting reports. We have video up on the TV, and we're diving right back into it. So it's the best part of the sport. If you play, you're happy for 5 minutes, and then you got to focus in on what's next. And our girls attack that.
Incredible story. Incredible accomplishment. And now your team, these women, have completely changed the landscape of 3x3 basketball for a nation. You've completely changed the mentality for sport in a nation. Not many places on earth you can do that, is there?
Not that I know of, but it's big, because it's not just basketball. It's women in basketball and women in sport out there. Obviously, like a lot of places, because I coach the men's team as well, and they've had success. They've won a couple Asia Cups. We've won some big Pro Tour events, and they get the lion's share of the attention. And our girls, have been fighting to continue to get better results. But if you watch it gradually, slowly, they have been achieving better results. A year ago, we won a bronze medal at the Asia Cup. A year ago, we won a women's series stopping Ulaanbaatar. This had never happened before. So they were these big steps that were happening in the moment, and people were all happy for them. But it's very much a what have you done for me lately sport, and it moves on to something else. But, it's like that quote of gradually then suddenly, and our girls continue to just persist. I've been hard on them, and I've tried to push them while also helping them believe that they're capable of what I'm trying to push them to. And what's so rewarding about this is sometimes you have to have a little extra moxie, I think, especially when you're playing at home, of hey, let's do something special. But of course, everybody came to the World Cup of, we're doing something special. And you have the right to do that. But our girls, to give them credit, have just persisted through a lot of losing and a lot of frustration, and still come to the gym with an eager mind and a eagerness to improve and be pushed in spite of frustrations and getting off track. So to give them credit, this isn't finishing second at a World Cup after things have always gone great. This has been a slow process of trying to believe and find small victories and don't think about how far you have to go, but think of how far you've already come. And it culminated in them doing something historic for their country.
We're going to stop talking about the World Cup in 3x3 right now. I think I couldn't think of a better way to end that conversation, but I'd like to shift gears into one of the other hats that you wear, Steve, which is as an associate general manager for the Edmonton Stingers. Now, you're back in Edmonton. You'll be going to the Stingers game tomorrow, where the Stingers will be squaring off against a strong Calgary Surge. I know you've watched the games from while you were overseas, watched them online. What are your impressions of how the team has been evolving this season?
I think they've been doing a great job. I've been keeping up. Sometimes the hours aren't great, but if the game's on at 6 a.m. in Ulaanbaatar, then you're up, and CBL Plus has been great to watch online. And it's a lot of fun to see the team rounding into shape. it's one of the challenges in the CBL is if you're recruiting good players, there's a chance that good players aren't going to be with you right away out of the jump because they're finishing their previous professional obligations, playing abroad, wherever they are. So us being able to add guys at this point in the season with Isaiah Osborne being back, Mike Nuga rejoining our team, those are huge boosts, and obviously huge boosts coming from Canadian spots. And they're on a roll. I think everybody that's been watching them has seen how they're rounding into shape, how there is a clear chemistry that's continuing to develop, and it hasn't even reached its peak yet. So to give Jordan, Coach Baker, and his staff credit, they've continued to hammer away at it. They've added a couple pieces. And, the CBL is really fluid. It's, you see signings all the time. You see guys that become available or get released, and you're debating about picking them up. And luckily, guys like Isaiah and Mike joining us, they're guys that have been with us previously. So there's, I think, a natural fit for them to come in. And you can see that because they've come in and they played well. And obviously, the guys that we already have are going to get them in there and make them feel welcome and a part of it quickly. So it's exciting. I think they're playing really well right now. Calgary is always a great game. It should be a lot of fun. And I'm hoping that tomorrow we get them back from something earlier in the year, and our guys just keep rolling.
I'm going to wrap up our conversation just by getting your thoughts on the upcoming Hoop City 3x3 event that we're going to be hosting here in Edmonton. We're moving it back from downtown Edmonton, where we had a great time the last couple of years, but we're moving it back to where it all started when we started hosting International FIBA 3x3, back to the Ice Palace in West Edmonton Mall. I've seen the team lineups that are coming in on both the men's and women's side, Steve, and my goodness, both men and women are packed with great teams, aren't they?
Yeah, it's going to be a loaded event. There's going to be teams from all over the world on the women's and the men's side. The quality of play is going to be extremely high. I mean, Edmonton's the only stop on the world tour that is in Canada, so it's a destination spot for all the teams that are on the tour. They want to make that trip to Canada. Canada's awfully nice in the summer, so this is one that a lot of guys and a lot of women have circled. And it's going to be a great event. I'm hopeful that people will come out and watch. There's going to be, medalists from the World Cup. There's going to be medalists from the previous Olympics. There's going to be an extremely high level of play, showcasing the sport. And it being back at West Edmonton Mall is going to be a lot of fun too. So I think, for anybody that is able to get out to the mall, watch the events, get involved, sign up for any other events that attach to it, and enjoy it, because the sport is steadily rising around the world, and Edmonton plays a key role in that, being the main hub for 3x3 in North America. So it's going to be great, and I know people from Edmonton and from neighboring areas will come in and support it, because the more that they see it, the more that they like it. Last year in Edmonton, it was a great event and really well attended, so I expect nothing less this year.
Well, Steve, thanks so much. Again, congratulations to you, your team, your country, all the hard work that you put in. Thanks so much for spending all this time with us this morning. And glad you're back in Edmonton. Glad you're going to be at the 3x3 event. And enjoy your time relaxing after all that you've accomplished.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Steve Sir joining us here on the Basketball Show. Ryan and I are going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to have part of the conversation I had with the voice of the Indiana Pacers and the Indiana Fever, Pat Boylan, here on your Sports Leader, Sports 1440, and the Basketball Show. Welcome back to the Basketball Show. I'm your host, Paul Sir. I am very pleased to be joined by our friend, Pat Boylan. Pat is the voice of the Indiana Pacers and the Indiana Fever. We haven't been able to talk for the last couple of weeks. Had a little bit going on in Indianapolis and elsewhere, Pat, but thanks so much for making time today.
Hey, Paul, appreciate you having me. It's good to be on with you as always.
Likewise. And let's start with what seems like a year ago is actually just over a week. Which it just seems unbelievable that Game 7 ended a week ago Monday, I believe.
And so much happened leading up to that Game 7 and the unfortunate injury to Tyrese Halliburton during Game 7. Why don't we start with that? What's the latest on Tyrese's situation? I'm assuming the surgery's been done already. And what's going on with Tyrese?
Yeah, unfortunately for him, the long road to recovery has only just begun. He had his surgery, I want to say it was either Monday or Tuesday of last week with Dr. O'Malley. He's in New York. At least U.S.-based athletes, there are two doctors that do these type of surgeries that are well-renowned. One is Dr. O'Malley in New York, and the other is, I'm going to butcher his name, it's something along the lines of Neil Elatrach in L.A. So those are the two names you hear when you hear of Achilles injuries. Unfortunately, they're names that you're hearing more often because for whatever reason, this has become a much more common injury in the NBA over the last few years and to its stars here lately. You think of the playoff run in of itself, Tyrese Halliburton, Jason Tatum, Damian Lillard. Those are three huge names. And DeJounte Murray suffered the same thing late in the season for Atlanta. So it's unfortunately been an injury that has cropped up far more often than it used to, and there's all sorts of theories and reasonings as to why that might be, but it's a really tough one. It's up there with some of the worst injuries that you can have. I think that's out of the question. I think the hope is that when you start to look at guys that have had this previously, and it'll be interesting to kind of watch Jason Tatum, who's on a almost parallel time frame, he's maybe a month ahead of Tyrese, is that almost all of the star basketball players that have had this injury have either been at the back end of their prime or beyond their prime. It's happened to a lot of guys in their mid-late 30s. Happened to Kobe Bryant. Probably the youngest guy, at least the youngest star that I can think of, is Kevin Durant, and even he was 30 at the time. So Tyrese is 25. Jason Tatum is probably, 27 or so. So it'll be interesting to see how these guys come back. Unfortunately, there is some evidence that the Achilles injury hinders a player in his future. But as I was saying, all of that evidence comes from guys that are much, much older. So Tyrese and Jason, to a lesser extent, have age on their side here. But unfortunately, it's a pretty difficult injury and one that takes a long time to come back from, and he's just going to have to be patient. And while the Pacers haven't put any official timeline on this, I would say all of next year is probably very much in doubt. But so he's probably about a week in to what is probably longer than a year's worth of recovery, and for him, patience is going to be the key word here for a long time.
Well, number one, I have a personal experience. I ruptured my Achilles in my mid-30s, and this is quite a while ago, but it is a difficult injury to come back from. And I think a couple of thoughts. I read a good article recently about Dominique Wilkins, who I think Dominique was around 29 or 30, kind of around Durant's age when he ruptured his Achilles. And again, we're going back 20 to 30 years. But he came back and had his best season the next year. Adrian Peterson ruptured his for the Minnesota Vikings. He was back in 4 months. That was a unparalleled recovery. I'm encouraged by this, Pat, that I think the physiotherapy, the surgery itself, I don't know what else you really can do. If you've got the best surgeon, they're going to do a great job of reattaching it. But it's all going to come down to a variety of factors: the severity of the injury, the individual body and how it recovers, and then the time and effort that they're going to put into the recovery. And I don't think there's any doubt in anybody's minds that both Tatum and Tyrese are going to put the time and energy into to come back fully. Klay Thompson's a good example. He never was quite the same player when he came back. Durant was close. He's been close to at his best. So it's the time frame. Like you said, it could be all of next season, but both Jason and Tyrese could surprise people and be back in the third to fourth quarters of next season as well. It is, I guess, the direction I'd like to take our conversation, Pat, would be the reason behind. It seems like the most common reason I'm hearing, and I'd be interested if this is what you're hearing too, is that players are having this happen at younger ages because they're playing so much more in games at younger ages. It's an overuse injury, in other words. Is that what you're hearing as well?
Yeah, I haven't heard anybody, I think, that has a definitive answer on all of this, but I do think there's a few factors at play. One of them being NBA players are just more athletic and more explosive than they used to be. And so I think some of it is you're asking tendons and ligaments to hold up against, much more explosive movements than maybe a player in the 90s. It's a unfortunately fascinating question that surrounds the Pacers, because the season started how it ended, which is 5 minutes into the season, James Wiseman, the Pacers backup center, tore his Achilles. And then in the first couple of weeks, Isaiah Jackson, the Pacers' other backup center, tore his Achilles. And then it ended with Tyrese Halliburton tearing his Achilles. So you're talking about 3 of the 15 guys on the roster, on the main roster, suffering this injury that you maybe saw once every couple of years in the NBA. So it's not just coincidence. I mean, we are seeing way too many examples to suggest that just some bad luck is happening. I do think the number of games these guys are playing, in AAU ball is different. The wear and tear, I have no medical degree, and nor am I anywhere near qualified to speak on it. But in a way, it almost reminds me of the increased occurrence that we saw of Tommy John in baseball, the Tommy John surgery, and it became to a point where a lot of pitchers eventually got it in his career. Now, I don't think, at least I hope, it's not a situation where a lot of NBA guys are experiencing this at some point. But I think they went back and looked at the Tommy John injury and they said, well, kids are throwing, tons of pitches and a lot more than they did growing up through AAU ball, through whatever you want to call it. So I think there's some parallels there. I think the amount of basketball that these guys play, it's become a year-round type of thing. And if you want to be competitive in basketball and have even the chance at a college scholarship, let alone playing in the NBA, in today's day, for better or for worse, and unfortunately probably more of it is for worse, you got to play year-round. And so that's just kind of, at least in the United States, how basketball works and how the AAU circuit works. And I think that probably has something to do with it as well. The hope here is that, as you say, while the injury occurrence is unfortunately becoming more prevalent, that the medical care alongside it becomes better too, and that this becomes less of a debilitating injury in the future. And hopefully we find ways, to be able to prevent it in the first place. It's, again, way over my head, but I found it kind of interesting that a lot of these injuries have had a similar look to them. Oftentimes it is when a player is getting a kick out pass and then he's taking one step back to gain leverage to move forward. And it's that step back where oftentimes the injury happened. I mean, it's what happened with Tyrese. It's what happened with Damian Lillard. A little bit different with Jason Tatum. But, can they try to coach certain movements out of the game? That's really, really hard. And I'm speaking to an area that's way above my mental capacity. But it is something that I think the NBA and trainers on teams have to figure out, because having 3 players, a fifth of your roster suffer this injury this year is a brutal circumstance, and hopefully something that we can make some headway on in the future in limiting this injury.
I'm talking with Pat Boylan, the voice of the Indiana Pacers and the Indiana Fever here on the Basketball Show. I guess just to wrap up this discussion, because it is such a huge issue, Pat. I mean, like that statistic, I can't think that has ever happened before to an NBA team, that you would have 3 of your 15 out with an Achilles. But it's going to lead, I think, to probably both preventative stretching, and I know a lot of attention must be being paid to what can you do to better adapt our bodies, or the bodies of the upcoming athletes, given how much they play, given how athletic and explosive they are, as you pointed out. The ounce of prevention here is going to go a long, long way as the future unfolds. I really like your point, though, about the explosiveness of today's athlete. And another article I read was how many more miles the athlete today in the NBA puts on his body compared to 20 to 30 years ago, because of the way that pressure is extended, because of the three-point shot requiring guarding so far from the basket for the entire game. The game has really changed. Like when you watch highlights of the game in the 90s, A, you're shocked at how slow it is. But B, the way that they guarded back then was just completely different, both athletically and both court coverage. So I think the modern athlete and the modern game, just the miles, wear and tear, all of that's going to require all kinds of adaptation, whether it's more load management, which is a scary thought, isn't it, of players taking games off. But that may be where it ends up.
It's the unfortunate catch-22 of what we're experiencing here, which is, the load management is, of course, a bad look for the NBA. But then you get these examples of players. If you think about how many games you play, if you go to Game 7 of the NBA Finals, it's 5, 6, 7 for the Pacers. So that's 23 extra games on top of 82, on top of 4 preseason. Now, Halliburton didn't play in every single one of those, but still, it's a lot of extra games to be played. And I think when you combine what these players do as kids coming up through the system with how many games are played in the NBA, with exactly what you're talking about, the rigors on the body to play today's brand of NBA are far more strenuous than they were in the 90s, as you note. And then also, the player is just far more explosive. And again, my head here, so I'm always hesitant to speak on stuff like this just because I don't know it well enough. But the athlete is just so much more explosive, and I don't know that Achilles tendons are significantly stronger to make up for that. So it's a unfortunate, fascinating medical question, and it's becoming clear that it's a problem in the NBA. Yet I don't know that there's an obvious solution to it, and it'll be interesting to see where the next 10 years takes us. I think 10 years from now, is this something that's becoming more and more prominent, more and more problematic, or have we gotten a handle on the preventative issue to make it happen in the first place? And then hopefully, if and when we have accomplished that we'll have the post-care when it does happen, the surgery and the rehab, to a spot where, it's not a situation where if you get hurt in the playoffs, you miss the rest of the playoff run and the rest of the next season. It's just such an unfortunate and difficult circumstance to think through from a Pacers perspective. Tyrese Halliburton goes down and you lose your shot at winning an NBA championship. And then you simultaneously, realistically, I don't want to put a ceiling on this team, because if you would have done that last year, you would have never even expected them to get to the conference finals, let alone the finals. But still, being realistic, that drops your ceiling and your chances of contention when you don't have Tyrese Halliburton. And all of that happens in 1 year, in one move, in one game. And it's just so frustrating to have it all come in the biggest moment in the history of the franchise, at least the NBA version of the franchise. You're hopeful to win a championship. You're hopeful to give yourself a chance at that first ever NBA championship. And instead, you're not just dealing with an injury that prevents you from doing that, but you're also dealing with an injury that might prevent you from doing it next year too.
Really well encapsulated, Pat. And I think the irony, the surreal nature of what you just described really almost defies the imagination. And I would add one more layer to that. And that would be the historically almost unbelievable, and I mean this in the most complimentary way, bizarre playoffs that Tyrese Halliburton had with 4 unreal game-winning shots that you just, one of them in a career is almost unheard of, but 4 in a playoffs. And to put them in a position to be where they were at. And after Game 5, I think a lot of people, and myself included, felt, well, you know what? Oklahoma City's just probably better. They found their rhythm. The Pacers are, probably going to go out in 6. And they sure didn't go out in 6. And they doubled down, toughened up. Fantastic Game 6 performance. Tyrese comes out, he's playing great, and then this happens. You just can't write this. The good Lord, Pat, has a real sense of humor is expressed in the weirdest way.
Yeah, it's amazing because the amount of players in the history of the NBA over the course of their career that have had the playoff moments that Tyrese Halliburton had in one playoff for their entire career is a very, very short list. And yet it ends in such cruel heartbreak. And the point that you were hitting on there is, kind of how I would drive this point home on the frustration and the heartbreak level is for those who watch the Pacers regularly, they know this. If there is a fault to Tyrese Halliburton's game is sometimes he is so good at setting up his teammates that occasionally he can forget how important it is for him to score. And you saw a couple of times in the playoffs through all of the brilliant moments that he had where he had a game where maybe he wasn't aggressive enough and that hurt the Pacers. However, the flip side of that is when he gets going early, it's almost always a good, great, or historic game for him. And when he hit that third three in the first quarter, he finished the game for either team with the most threes that night, and he got hurt at the 5-minute mark of the first quarter. You just think about that. It's crazy.
That's incredible.
He had a game going. Just when you watch this guy enough, he's got a look in his eye. He's got a confidence. And for him, figuring out how to do that more consistently will be a key, I think, for the remainder of his career, finding how to make those high moments more consistent. But when he's locked in like that, it's a scary thing. He's got a look in his eye, and he had that look in Game 7 in Oklahoma City. I'm not sitting here saying the Pacers definitely win if he doesn't go down, but what I am saying is when Tyrese has looked like that in the first quarter, things oftentimes go well, almost always, I should say, go well for the Pacers. And that's not to say they would have won a championship, but it is to say I'm very confident that at bare minimum they would have been in a position to give themselves a chance late. And that's what's so heartbreaking about the whole thing, I think, is just how well he was playing in that first quarter. He had talked about it. This is something you play your whole career for, this moment, and then you come out and you hit 3 threes in the first quarter, and then that injury happens. It's just, it's almost like sports movies are almost always very cliche. They have this up and coming storyline, and then they either end with that player or team achieving something unthinkable or coming close and something keeping them from achieving that unthinkable. And unfortunately, this kind of follows that movie cliche, but to an extent that I think if you were to write it in Hollywood, it would be written off as too unrealistic. This guy having 4 game-winning shots in each game of the playoffs, the way that he did, and then to have it end like that. It's a storyline that even in sports, the reason we love sports, whether it's basketball, hockey, baseball, football, pick your poison, we love it because we don't know what's going to happen. And it's not scripted. And that's what, makes this playoff run in some ways for the Pacers so brilliant and in some ways so heartbreaking. And, I think it's important, and it's something that I've been stressing to those around the organization and those just kind of in my general orbit is, you got to soak these moments in. Like when the Pacers won the Eastern Conference Finals, the players have to move forward, but take the time to soak this in because it doesn't happen all that often, and you don't know what's going to happen in the finals. And the Pacers got right there, right on the doorstep. It's amazing to think because I grew up I was born in 1990, so I grew up with the 90s Pacers with Reggie Miller and Rick Smits and Jalen Rose and Chris Mullin and Sam Perkins and those teams that were contenders. And then the early 2000s team, which kind of rebuild around Jermaine O'Neal and Ron Artest, and we know how that story ends. There were so many Pacers teams that on paper were better than the one this year. But this one accomplished more than any of those teams ever had. The Pacers had only ever been to one other NBA Finals, and that was against Kobe and Shaq and the Lakers, and that one went 6. So going 7, going to the precipice, is the most accomplished a Pacers team has ever been in the NBA playoffs. And to come that close is heartbreaking, but also a testament to what this group was able to achieve and a testament to why we love sports, because no one would have thought the 4 seed out of the East would have been a win away from a championship against the team with the best net rating in the history of the NBA. The Pacers did accomplish that. It's so frustrating they didn't get the opportunity to see if they could pull it off due to that injury.
You can listen to the entire interview with Pat Boylan on our podcast. And Ryan, I'm going to be asking you if we can post the link to that podcast by the end of the show because
For sure. It'll be up in the next 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, it's a great complete interview. And speaking of great interviews, coming up after the break will be my conversation with Ben Golliver from the Washington Post. You're going to want to listen to this. I love these guys that are there. They're living it and they're sharing their up close, inches away experiences with us that really, really takes us courtside, in the locker rooms, in the heads of the players. That's certainly what we're going to be doing with Ben. So thanks so much for spending your time with us this morning on your Sports Leader, Sports 1440. Paul and Ryan with the Basketball Show. We'll be right back after these messages.